Hello, and welcome back to Real Seekers. I'm your host, Dale, the Real Seeker, and today I'm joined by a returning guest, Massimo Paris. Massimo's been on the show before, speaking about the topic of Eucharistic miracles and some of the scientific evidence related to that. Today, he's here for a different topic, but a related one on Marian apparitions and specifically Our Lady of Guadalupe. But just before we get into today's topic, Massimo, I just want to turn it over to you. What have you been up to since you've been on the show? Is there any updates that you want to tell the audience about?
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure, an honor, and a privilege to be here again. Thank you for inviting me, having invited me again. Well, the subject of Eucharistic miracles have been studying and researching the last, I would say, more or less a year or a little bit more. So I'm have been recently investigating that subject. But the subject of Our Lady of Guadalupe, have been studying it and giving presentation. I would say probably, I don't remember the exact year, but probably for a good 10 years. I was invited. You had asked me, Dale, how I started. Well, I was invited by a friend of mine to give a short presentation, about half an hour, at the dinner that was in honor of Our Lady of Guadalupe, which I did. And then you can see behind me there is I purchased a life-size replica of the Tilma. But then I started, of course, I started reading books. I started watching videos. I have the fortune or the privilege of I speak, read, and write Spanish, so I'm quite fluent with Spanish. Actually, I work as an interpreter for that language, besides being an interpreter for Italian and French also. So I watched a lot of videos, and in particular, I actually there is an institute in Mexico City that is called ISEG, ISEG, that is an acronym for Instituto Superior de Estudios Guadalupanos, Superior Institute of Guadalupan Studies, that was founded by Monsignor Eduardo Chavez, who was the postulator for the cause of canonization of San Juan Diego. So there are plenty of videos by him on YouTube in Spanish. I imagine there are many in English, but I always watch the ones in Spanish. So I practice also my Spanish, and so actually I took a course. El Instituto Superior de Estudios Guadalupano, the ISEG, offers 4 levels of 4 different courses. I took the first one, as was very interesting. So, and as I said, I watched plenty of videos by him, and I would say, probably without fearing of making a mistake, that he is definitely, if not the leading expert on Our Lady of Guadalupe apparitions and history and so on, at least one of the main. I would definitely see, probably he's the leading expert on the apparition of Our Lady of Guadalupe. So this is somehow my credentials regarding my short story about my interest in the apparitions of Our Lady of Guadalupe, her message, and her message, and the team of San Juan Diego.
Awesome. All right. And
By the way, I'm sorry if I forgot one thing important, that actually today is the 12th of December, is the feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. This seed I had asked you to be given this chance. Actually, although the apparitions span over 4 days, from the 9th of November 1531 until the 12th of December 1532, 1531, sorry, 1531. So the 12th of December 1531, it was when the Blessed Mother imprinted her image, the one I have behind me, on the Tilma of San Juan Diego. So today is her feast. So for those who are Catholic, will listen to this presentation, happy feast of Our Lady Guadalupe.
Awesome. Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. So yeah, good on you for remembering today is that the anniversary. It is that day, special day for this special topic. Now just before I turn it over to you to give your presentation, just going back to the Eucharistic miracles, behind the scenes, you and I and Dr. Franco
Serafini.
Saffarini have
Serafini.
been
Serafini.
Serafini.
Yes.
Serafini. We've kind of been organizing sometime in the new year a debate on Eucharistic miracles with the well-known skeptic Kevin Nontradicath. And I know Kevin, he's been reading Franco's book and making a bunch of videos and stuff like that. I'm just kind of curious. In the meantime, what have you thought about Kevin's kind of following up on your work and on Franco's work through his videos?
Well, you, you want a small detour from this presentation?
Oh, yeah, nothing detailed. I just mean in
No,
general.
one main consideration is that one of the main criticism that Kevin presented to the validity of the Eucharistic miracle, he used the term testing into compliance, meaning that especially, I imagine he was referring especially to Dr. Castagnon Gomez, who practically was the leader of the team who examined the samples from the Eucharistic miracles of Buenos Aires, from the Eucharistic miracle. In Buenos Aires, there were 5 miracles in 4 years between 1992 and 1996. Then he led also the team that analyzed the Eucharistic Miracle 1 of Tixla in Mexico 2006. So practically, Kevin, his point was that allegedly Castagnon Gomez went around looking for the experts that would confirm that the Eucharistic miracle were valid. Number one, I do not think that is exactly the case because before going to, for example, to Dr. Zaghibi, they had asked, for example, Professor Linoli, who had analyzed the Eucharistic miracle Lanciano. They didn't stop there. They went to Zaghibi because he had a more extensive reputation as a forensic pathologist. He had performed 10,000 autopsies during his career. And so I noticed that Kevin had kind of dismissed Zaghibi as almost as a fraud. We saw, I mean, Ron Tesoriero and Mike Willis, he went to him. He understood that there were Catholics, so he interpreted those slides as myocardial tissue. Well, thank God that Zaghibi is deceased. He's dead now. But here, if he were alive, there could be almost a material for a lawsuit for defamation of character. Someone of the character with the reputation of Zaghibi would not just issue an evaluation, a diagnosis of some slide based on the expectations that he thought that the people he brought those slides to him had. I think it's kind of very absolutely non-scientific. Plus, as I said, someone the reputation of Zaghibi, if someone told him, there is the gentleman Kevin O'Connor who said that you just issued the diagnosis about those lies based on what you thought their expectations were. I think not only this is as I said, that doesn't seem, not only it's not scientific, but actually I think it's very unethical. So it's an arbitrary and gratuitous evaluation of someone. I don't know based on what evidence. Kevin requires a lot of strict adherence to scientific protocol when it's the scientific protocol to be respected on the part of the church or the representative of the church or the scientists or expert that the church chooses. But then when it comes to him, I see he's make very loosely statements without any scientific evidence. And in the case of Zaghibi, it's very gratuitous and arbitrary. And anyway, regarding the testing to compliance, well, he seems he does kind the same thing with against the church. So he goes around issuing evaluations or statements that without any supporting evidence. Actually, in that video that was recorded in July, where Kevin, there were the four people. There was you, there was Kevin, there was Tyler Fowler, and there was Dan. I don't know how do you pronounce Van Nuys. How do you pronounce that?
Van Nuys, is how I say it, yeah.
At a certain point, you even presented to him a letter written by Dr. Zaghibi, and he still didn't seem to me was too convinced. So to the point that when he recorded or posted on YouTube he posted two videos so far about the 5 Eucharistic miracles described in the book by Dr. Serafini. The first one, Lanciano, and the second one of Buenos Aires. And it still seems to me that he didn't change too much his position. So it seems to me that he uses two standards. One standard for the church is very strict standard expected from the church and its representative. And when it comes to him, I think the standard at that point becomes much looser. So I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah, double standards is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
he has
Okay.
double standard. Yes. Yeah.
Fair
Exactly.
enough. Fair enough. All right, cool. Well, with that said, like I said, we're going to be doing a discussion with you guys sometime in the new year with Dr. Franco Serafini there. But for today, we're here for obviously Our Lady of Guadalupe, a Marian apparition, and I'm
Yes.
interested to see the evidence that you have there, especially with the Tilma as you see in the background, because there are some associations. Some people say that there are comparable evidence to the Shroud of Turin. So, with that said, I'll turn it over to you to make your presentation. Let me just remove the pin and bring. Oh, okay. All right. So I think it's showing your slide now. Yeah. Go ahead and take over with your presentation.
Okay. Can you see my cursor? You see my cursor
Yep.
on the slide? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so as I said today, so we are talking about Our Lady of Guadalupe, her message, and the Tilma of San Juan Diego. So the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe is the one on the left of the slide. And sorry. It doesn't change my slides manually.
What do you mean? It's not letting you change your slides?
Nope,
Progressing.
it's not progressing. Also, let me take the
Okay. We did do a background test, folks, before, and it was working before we hit the record button. So
I got it, Massimo.
oh yeah, it's work Dios te salve. It's working now.
I went on.
Okay. We found another way. I was pushing a button, but actually there are two arrows, either to progress or to go backward under the slide, so I can use that one. Okay, Dios Salve Maria is the Hail Mary in Spanish. Today, as I had told you, Dale, I'm not going to use any uh, part of presentation in Spanish. So I would like to start showing this slide. This slide is a stained glass window that has nothing to do with the apparition of Our Lady of Guadalupe, but is actually a slide that shows the wedding feast of Cana, where probably most of the people know there was the bridegroom who ran out of wine. So the Blessed Mother told Christ that the bridegroom had run out of wine. And Christ said, "What I have to do with you, woman?" And the Blessed Mother told the servants, "Do whatever he tells you to do." So what is the connection? The connection is that practically in not only on the occasion of the apparition of the Guadalupe, but I would say on the occasion of every Marian apparition, the Blessed Mother never, the Blessed Virgin Mary never attracts the attention upon herself. She always points us in the direction of her divine Son, Jesus Christ. And so that was the case, but the apparition of Our Lady of Guadalupe do not make any difference, any exception to this general aspect or rule. So I usually this is my first time, the first time that I give a virtual presentation about Our Lady of Guadalupe. I always give presentation live, or I've been interviewed on radio shows, but so usually, especially my live presentation, are divided in four parts. So the first part, I talk about the historical aspects before the apparitions. Then I talk about the story of the apparitions. Then the third part, I talk about the historical aspects after the apparitions. And finally, I talk about the symbolism and the message of the apparitions. So today, very likely, I shall limit myself to the first three parts, because last time I had no idea I was going to talk for 4 hours. At the end, I was exhausted. So it took me that day, the afternoon of that day, and the next day to recover. So I try to, number one, I try to avoid myself to undergo that same process. But also, I
So,
noticed that, yes, go ahead. Were you?
no, I was just I was saying, sounds good. Yeah, give us
No,
some
no,
ideas.
and then I noticed that when I sent the video to some people, when I told them that it was 4 hours, that I noticed that many of them got scared. Also, you don't need to watch it in just one sitting. You can watch by installments, one time, two time, three times. You can take all the time that you want. But I had the impression that definitely that 4 hour
Yeah, well,
amount of time.
believe it or not, the YouTube thing, like if you're trying to get the maximum views, I don't engage in this stuff, but the average duration view of a view is 12 minutes or less. So people's attention spans these days, unfortunately, aren't always the greatest. But I think with my audience, it's they're really good. They're real seekers, so they like the
Okay.
longer format and stuff like
Okay.
that.
But anyway, since I plan to also to share with people that are not necessarily a real seekers, I try to concentrate the span of time.
Yep, cool.
So I shall start with the historical aspects before the apparitions. Sometimes I have had some comments by some people, but really not the majority, that they said, "Why do you get into that part?" Well, I strongly believe that without explaining what was the situation before the apparitions, probably the understanding of the message, the understanding of the apparitions, how providential the apparition of the Blessed Mother were, would be much reduced, much more understandable. Would not have the same impact. Even because I think that many people probably would think that those who have not investigated the apparition in depth could think that well, the Aztecs were the villains, the foes, the Spaniards were the heroes or the good guys, and the Blessed Mother was a superheroine. Well, I would say that the situation was enormously more complex, to the point that within that period, within the, I would say that the 10 years before the apparition, so between 1521 and 1531, when the apparition occurred, there were actually four different elements or four different aspects of the historical situation. And in the sense, there were the Aztecs against the Aztecs, against the Spaniards. So the Spaniards against the Aztecs, the Spaniards against the Spaniards, and the Aztecs against the Aztecs. So I shall go through all of these four different aspects of situations. So this is a painting of Hernán Cortés. Hernán Cortés was a Spaniard who, in 1519, so 12 years before the apparitions, he landed with a group of, I would say, a small army of about 600. He landed on the east coast of Mexico. Actually, I'll show you more in detail. So he landed here on in Veracruz, on the, as I said, on the east coast of Mexico. And with about 600 men, some horses, not as many horses as the men. They definitely had a superior advantage when it comes to weaponry, because they had firearms, whereas the Aztecs had no firearms. But nonetheless, without this is the one that we see from Veracruz through Zempoala, Jalapa, Tlaxcala, and Cholula. They advance in 2 years from 1519 to 1521 to the Tenochtitlan. Tenochtitlan was the capital of the Aztec Empire. But practically, this whole advancement from the coast of Mexico towards the capital of the Aztec Empire is considered by many historians to have been one, at least by historians or people who are interested in military history, one of the most brilliant campaigns in military history. One thing that I don't know if everybody knows is that during the advancement towards the center of the the Aztec Empire, Cortés and his men established alliances, for example, with other ethnic groups, with other peoples like the Tlaxcalans and the Cholulans, without whose help, no doubt in my mind, they would not have been able to defeat and submit the Aztec Empire within just 2 years. Maybe you had been able to do it, but it would have taken probably much longer time, and many more men, at least many more Spaniards. The Tlaxcalan were definitely very eager to ally with Cortés, because the Aztecs performed human sacrifices. and they waged wars that were called in Spanish Las Guerras Floridas, or the Wars of Flowers, that didn't have as object, as goal, the conquest of new territories. The goal of the Guerras Floridas, the Flower Wars, was to capture prisoners to offer to as victims to the Aztec gods. The Cholulan initially were allied of the Aztecs, but then they tried initially to kind of ambush the Spaniards, but they realized what they were going to do, so they practically killed all the leaders of the Cholulans, and somehow then also them cooperated. So the next slide shows that this is a painting that shows what is called the Battle of Tenochtitlan. So the battle for the conquest of the last stronghold of the Aztec, that was their capital. Tenochtitlan was in the location where there is nowadays Mexico City. So to give a better idea. So when someone talks about a battle, someone could think that would be 2-3 days, for a week, 2 weeks. No, actually, it went on from sorry, I'm talking from the August, from May 26th to August 13th of 1521. So it took actually it lasted 2 months, 2 weeks, and 5 days. At the end of which during this battle, the Aztec Emperor Moctezuma II was actually killed. First they captured him, the Spaniards captured him, and then they killed him. So after those 2 years, from 1519 when they landed until 1521, with those 2 years they were able to conquer, defeat and conquer and submit the whole Aztec Empire. So now we get into the first part, the Aztecs against the Spaniards. Okay, so as you can see in these, so practically after 1521, the Aztecs had lost the war and the empire. Their temples and their idols had been destroyed. Their religion had been prohibited because, as already said, and I will show a slide later, they performed human sacrifices. But what is in particular visible in this slide, that had been decimated by diseases. The Spaniards brought to Central America, to the Native Americans that lived in Mexico, diseases to which they had never been exposed, so for which they had no natural immunity, and they were decimated. It's, I heard of numbers that seem almost hard to believe, but I'm not going to. But they were definitely, many of them were caught these diseases to which they were not exposed. So here, this is a drawing by an Aztec drawing. You can see there are several people here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, that have what look like pimples on their skin, or some kind of rashes on their skin. Very likely that was a smallpox. This gentleman here that has that strange item outside of his mouth. Sorry. That strange item in front of his mouth that looks like an upside down smoking pipe. That in the drawings of the Aztecs, that meant that the person was speaking or singing. So that is the meaning of that sign. So probably that was a doctor or some kind of shaman, or I don't know why it keeps changing my slides without me doing anything. And was trying to help the person in front of him. Also, this other person below them was somehow speaking, probably speaking, but these other three on the right-hand side of the slide were neither speaking nor singing. So they were either so sick or sleeping or maybe dead. So in order to give an idea. But besides being decimated by the Spaniards, decimated by the diseases, they had been humiliated and abused by the Spaniards, to the point that they thought that the world was coming to an end. And actually, one day, a Spaniard was telling them, "But you don't know the real true God," referring to especially to our Lord Jesus Christ. At which point, one of their elders said, "Well, if you're telling us that our gods have died, it means that we also have to die." And actually, many of them committed suicide. In light of all these aspects, had lost the war, the temple had been destroyed, the region prohibited, decimated by disease, and humiliated and abused by the Spaniards, there was a big resistance to conversion. The Spaniards conquered Mexico, submitted the empire in 1521, but the first missionaries arrived in Mexico only in 1524, so it's 3 years later. And even after the arrival of the missionaries, still there was a big resistance to conversion. In particular, I'll show you this slide. This slide where this is a fresco. This is modern, of course. But you see, this is a Franciscan friar who is trying to convert the native populations of central Mexico. And you can see they're looking elsewhere. They were not the success of the success of the Franciscan were the first one to arrive, and later some Dominican friars arrived. But until 1531, the success in the conversion of the natives was very low. So now we get into the second aspect, the Spaniards against the Aztecs. As I had said before, the Aztecs performed human sacrifices. They thought that the way to sustain their gods, especially the god's son, as you can see here on the top left-hand side, was to offer to them the blood and in particular the heart of the victims. The victims that I had said at the beginning often were prisoners of war. So you see, the victim would be placed on a sacrificial flat stone, and they would be held by the legs and the arms or the neck. And then one priest, Aztec priest, would practically, with a knife made of obsidiana, they would practically open the chest and pull out the heart. I'm sorry to be that crude, but that was what happened. But of course, the Spaniards prohibited that practice. The other thing that the Aztec did, once the victim had been sacrificed, sometimes, for example, when they inaugurated the Templo Mayor in Tenochtitlan, that was the main temple in Tenochtitlan, the capital, they sacrificed thousands of victims. So it must have been something we cannot even imagine. Then they would throw the victim down the steps of their pyramids. The temples were at the top of the pyramids, and then the people would consume their flesh in a ritual cannibalism. You can see here there is a god. You see there is like two pots, three pots. In this pot there is a leg, in that pot there is an arm with a hand. This pot there is a head. We must try to understand that in a culture that performed cannibalism Not necessarily it was because they were in starving to death. It was a ritual cannibalism. Number one was a way of participating to the victims of a sacred sacrifice. But that was done also in Greece when they didn't slaughter human beings, but when there were sacrifices they would sacrifice animals usually, and even the Old Testament they would sacrifice. For example, the Passover lamb, and then they would consume them. So Christ is the one that somehow, number one, was not an animal, but we still consume the blood and flesh of Christ through the Eucharist because he is the Lamb of God, has replaced with an unbloody sacrifice, the sacrifice of ancient times in different traditions. But I was saying that one aspect was to participate to the results of fruits of a sacred sacrifice. But there was also the aspect, especially if these people were the people of sacrifice were warriors captured during the Flower Wars, the Guerras Floridas. It was a way of acquiring their strength, their bravery, their skills, and so on. So I don't know if it makes sense, but this was their culture. The other thing is one of the main gods of the Aztec was this one represented in this codex. The name was Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl meant in Nahuatl. The Aztecs speak Nahuatl. Also, San Juan Diego spoke Nahuatl, but Quetzalcoatl meant the feathered serpent, the serpent with feathers. You can see here the feathers. They keep changing but you see that it was a serpent. Okay, so imagine when the Spaniards heard that one of the main gods was a feather, although feathered, but it was a serpent. What do you think they started thinking of? That they were worshippers of Satan. They associated with the serpent in the garden, the snake as a form of Satan in the Garden of Eden. So they started thinking that possibly maybe they had been created by Satan, and so they started thinking that they were not human, maybe they didn't even have a soul, and they have no rights to receive the sacraments. And so for probably they abuse them in every way possible. They sexually abused them, they killed them, they enslaved them, and they stole their properties, especially gold. So this that went on practically uncontrolled when any limitation between 1521 when the Spaniards conquered the empire until the arrival of the first missionaries in 1524. Then when the missionaries arrived, they realized that what the Spaniards, the conquistadors, were doing, and they tried to put an end to this situation, at least to limit it. And that didn't go too well, which led us to the third situation, that was the Spaniards against the Spaniards. So the missionaries, as I said, tried every way possible to limit all these abuses. But as at the point went worse and worse and worse, to the point in 1530, the conquistador kidnapped two, a missionary and one of his servants, and so the bishop, the Sumáraga, organized a procession to ask for the release of the two men. But then the procession was attacked by the conquistadors. Actually, they even attempt to kill the bishop. They threw the spear to him. but unfortunately, the poor, the true individual, and that one was killed and quartered. The other one was scourged, and they cut one of his feet. So at that point, Bishop de Sumarga said, told the other friars, let's remove all the altar cloths from the churches, from the churches, and let's move. They moved to Tlatelolco, which was a nearby town. And the Sumarga also has communicated all the members of what was called the real audience, la real audiencia, the real audience. That was this government formed by the conquistadors. You can imagine that for the Aztecs was another shock. So seeing the missionaries who had tried to protect them from the abuse of the conquistador, leaving the Mexico City at the time Tenochtitlan, they felt abandoned by the new god after they had been betrayed by the old gods that had not helped them to win the war against the Spaniards. So in 1531, Bishop de Zumarraga wrote a letter to the Emperor Charles V saying that unless God intervenes, this land is going to be lost. We should see that somehow God intervened in the next year in 1531. And finally, there were the Aztecs against the Aztecs. So practically, because of these, the sexual abuses of the Spaniards with the Aztecs women, so there were sexual abuses, sexual enslavement, and so on. There were a lot, but there were children which were born out of wedlock. These children which were born out of wedlock were seen by the Spaniards as the result of sin and debauchery, and were seen by the Aztecs as the result of sexual enslavements and abuse. Often they were abandoned. And there are reports that sometimes they would wander the town or trying to find some food to eat. So anyway, here and the historical the historical aspects of how the situation was before the apparitions to show that the situation was very, very chaotic and tragic, to say the least. It's not that, here the Spaniards arrive, here the heroes arrive, and then the Blessed Mother appears, the superheroine, everything was perfect.
Can I ask a question? So,
Please.
so given this historical background information and how dire the situation was, I know we haven't gotten to your next part of the presentation on the apparition, but
Yes.
on given this background, I'm just wondering, wouldn't it make sense for a skeptic to be like, well, we'll see, look, you've just provided the proof. Um, Given the dire situation, it would make sense why they would have to make up a legend about an apparition or something like that. Like, doesn't this background information kind of help the skeptic in saying, well, they had to do something, so they had to invent this legend to try and fix the situation? Like, how would you respond to that as providing a
Well, I shall respond with the next slides actually first.
okay.
The point is that there was I watched the two videos that I was Kevin recorded about the Apparition of Radio Guadalupe, and the amount of evidence, historical evidence, and not only historical, but I would say also scientific, is absolutely enormous. To the point that the reason that Kevin produced are very limited, and actually, I have the impression also in this case, as I said about the Eucharistic miracles, that Kevin somehow picks and chooses the evidence that sustains or supports his theory, whereas he leaves aside other evidence that is enormously more important. And this is an example. This document here is what is called the Nican Mopua. Nican Mopua, as you can see up there, are the first two words of are the first two words that you see that okay, there. You see Nican, Nican, Mopua, Mopohua. So Nican Mopua in Nahuatl, that was the language spoken by the Aztecs and also by the central population of Mexico, meant here it is narrated. Would correspond to in English the story started with once upon a time or Italian c'era una volta. Okay.
And when does this date from?
Okay, the Nican Mopua, almost all the authors agree was written by Antonio Valeriano. Antonio Valeriano was a native Mexican who was educated by the Franciscan missionaries. Actually, he was a disciple, a student of Bernardino de Sahagún that Kevin mentions in his, I think in the first of his two videos, but very peculiarly, he doesn't mention the Nican Mopua. So the Nican Mopua could have been written around 1545, 1548. So just a few years, consider, I'll say later, but I'll start saying now, both San Juan Diego and Juan de Zumárraga, the bishop, died, they both died in 1548, okay? The apparition were in 1531, both San Juan Diego and the bishop died in 1548. But having been educated by the Franciscan, the Spanish missionaries, he had been taught Spanish, had been taught Latin, and of course he spoke Nahuatl. That was a native language because he was a native Mexican. Having been a native Mexican, but having also trained by the Franciscan mission who taught him Spanish and Latin, he wrote with a Latin alphabet. You see, Nican Mopua. You see that? You see that Nican Mopua, and so on. So those are the letters of the Latin alphabet. So Valeriano was able to write using the Latin alphabet. But the problem was that he wrote in Nahuatl using the Latin alphabet and writing so phonetically. So Nican Mopua and so on. So the problem was that writing in Nahuatl, even if Spanish people could read the document, they would not be able to understand what they would be able to read the letters or even the words, but they would not be able to understand what those words or sentences meant because they didn't speak Nahuatl. At the same time, the natives would be able to understand the Nahuatl if someone had read that to them, but they would not be able to read the Latin alphabet, at least for a few years at the beginning. To the point that this document was published by Luis Lasso de la Vega in 1649. I remember that. I'm quite confident that I plan to rewatch much more in detail. Kevin mentioned in the first of his two videos that there is no written document about the apparitions until 1649. I would say this is incorrect because, yes, the Nican Mopua was printed through the printing press in 1649 for the first time. But this original, this is preserved at the public library in New York. So was in existence since probably 1545, 1548. And Antonio Valeriano, I would say, almost no doubts that he had known San Juan Diego personally. So he had the chance to to learn from him directly the stories of the apparition. But then he wrote about the stories of the apparition in this it's a very small document that can be, I don't know, no more than 15 pages, if I remember correctly. I have an English translation, of course. So I don't speak Nahuatl, even though. And actually, because of that problem, that the document was written in with the Latin alphabet, but following it phonetically, the Spanish, using phonetically the Nahuatl. The first Spanish translation was published for the first time only in 1926. Does it make sense?
Yep.
Does it make sense? Okay.
Yep.
So as I said, number one, Kevin doesn't mention any document for what I remember, and I remember quite well. Can be wrong, but I'm pretty confident that there was no written document before 1649. This document was written more than 100 years before 1649. So far, so good?
Yeah, you might be answering this later on, but it may be appropriate here because I remember when the skeptic Kevin brought up his point, and he was saying, look, this Juan Diego, he's not even a historical figure. One of the points he made is he pointed to a Roman Catholic expert, Monsignor
Schulenberg. It's Monsignor
Guiraud,
Schulenberg. Monsignor Schulenberg.
and he apparently denied the existence of this person. So I'm just wondering why would he, as a Roman Catholic, deny it if he would know about these documents and stuff?
Well, you know, number one, to make a comparison, I have no doubts in my mind to the point that I would put my head under the guillotine that the Charlotte of Turin is the real cloth that wrapped the body of Jesus of Nazareth. Okay. Nonetheless, there are plenty of people that do not believe that cloth is authentic. Regarding Monsignor Schulenberg, there too, the point is that when I said that Kevin seems to pick and choose, Kevin picked up Monsignor Schulenberg, but he left out a huge amount of other literary and historical and archaeological evidence. But anyway, let me stick to this aspect, okay? Monsignor Schulenberg, as Kevin said, he was forced to resign in 1986 after having been the dean or the director or whatever, the abbot of the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe. What Kevin, and that's true, I think, is very strange. I noticed he quoted or showed documents of the Vatican. So I'm very doubtful he didn't notice what was written on those documents of the Vatican. So let me, here I'm somehow jumping the gun, but since you have asked me the question, I want to answer. San Juan Diego was beatified by, okay, strike that. Let me rewind a little bit. The process that leads to the canonization of someone goes through different phases, at least three. The first one is to become servant of God, then venerable, then blessed. So that would mean to be beatified by the church, and then canonized. At that point, the person becomes a saint. For the beatification, it is necessary to have one miracle performed through the intercession of that person that is going to then be beatified. And for the canonization, it is necessary to have a second miracle, which lead at that point the church to canonize the person. So far, so good?
Yep.
Okay. San Juan Diego was was beatified on this May 6th, 1990. And John Paul II specifically traveled to Mexico City for the beatification. I say specifically, usually in particular the canonization, they usually occur at St. Peter in the Vatican, in Rome. It's not that common for the Pope to travel abroad. John Paul II traveled for both the beatification and the canonization of San Juan Diego. As a Pope, he skipped the need for the first miracle for the beatification because he said, and I totally agree with him, maybe there was so much historical, archaeological, and literary evidence that it was not necessary the miracle. So he beatified without the need for the miracle. So it was planned for him to come to Mexico City for the canonization, for the beatification that had to take place on May 6th, 1990. Okay? 3 days before the beatification, on May 3rd, 1990, a young man by the name Juan Jose Barragan, who was allegedly, he had some problems with very, very difficult family situation. The parents were divorced, so he lived with the mother. He was somehow, I read in several sources that he was a drug addict. But anyway, the day of December, December, the day of Apparition, the day of May 3rd, 1990, he was in the house with the mother. He takes a knife and starts trying to stab himself. He wanted to commit suicide. The mother was able to remove the knife from his hands. The guy goes to the balcony and tries to jump from the balcony down onto the street. The mother is able to grab him by the legs, and for a few seconds was able to prevent his fall, grabbing his legs. And in those few seconds, while she was holding his legs, she said she had heard that there was being told all over the newspaper, TV, that John Paul II was coming to Mexico City for the beatification of San Juan Diego. So in those few moments said, Juan Diego, my hijo, Juan Diego, my son. And then she lost, she was a woman, plus this guy was head down. So she lost, she was not able to hold him anymore. He plunged from according to the American standards, from the third floor. From the Mexican side would be the second floor. But anyway, it was 10 feet of height. So it would be 33 feet of height. And he plunged to dove to head down, and hit the ground. It was a cement, concrete ground, head first. The people thought that he was dead. Actually, they covered. He had blood coming out of the nose, the eyes, and the mouth. They covered him with a blanket. The mother tried to rush down. In those took some time, maybe half a minute, whatever, to come down to. She comes out. He at some point, so they thought he was dead. He somehow sit ups or removes the blanket. The ambulance arrives. I listened to an interview with the mother in Spanish, of course. They said she had no idea how, she was so devastated. She didn't remember how she climbed onto the ambulance, blah, blah. But anyway, he, Juan Jose Barragan, and the mother were taken to the hospital. A CAT scan and I don't know if other imaging, they wanted to sedate him. He refused to be sedated. He had the strength to refuse to be sedated. Arriving at the hospital, they perform a CAT scan or another imaging analysis. He had a fracture of the skull that start originally from the right orbit of the right eye and then proceed and to the practically ending to the back of the left ear. There was the cephalorachidhian liquid, the liquid that is inside the skull that surrounds the brain, and it also surrounds in the vertebral column the spinal cord, surround the spinal cord, had spilled out. When he arrived there, no one could understand how this person was still alive. The mother asked Dr. Hernandez, now I don't remember verbatim, but I can retrace very easily. What was going to happen? And the doctor said, "I'm sorry, but he's going to die because of the seriousness. His skull was fractured. There had been other. He had 95% of chances to die, and 5% to survive. But in case he had survived, he would be confined to a wheelchair. He would be paralyzed for the rest of his life. So they placed him under sedation for 3 days until May 6th. On May 6th, at the moment in which John Paul II was elevating the host during the consecration, I listened to several interviews with the doctor that received him at the hospital, by Monsignor Chavez, who has been the postulator for the cause of canonization San Juan Diego. At the moment in which John Paul II was elevating the host, Jose Juan Barragan practically, I'm sorry, strike that. On May 6th, the doctor decided to stop to stop the sedation and to let Jose Juan Jose Barragan practically to follow his destiny and eventually to die. So they stopped the sedation, but when John Paul II was elevating the host for the consecration during Mass, for the beatification of San Juan Diego, Jose Juan Barragan wakes up, he's hungry, there is a patient next to him, takes the food, he had brought a tray with food, he takes the tray with food and starts eating. Okay, and nurses arrive, sees the scene, runs to the doctor, says, doctor, the cadaver is eating, the cadaver is eating. So the doctor and the nurse ran back to him and realized that this guy was eating. So new analyses were performed. The skull had completely healed. All the vessels had reconnected. He was not paralyzed. He was kept until the 12th of May under observation there, and then he was released without any paralysis, without any, not only not having died, but without any paralysis. Okay? So this is what happened between May 3rd and May 3rd, May 6th, and until May 12th. Monsignor Schulenberg practically was, as Kevin said, forced to resign in 1996. There had been 6 years to put together the interview with the witnesses, the reports of the medical team in Mexico, to send this stuff all to Rome to be revised by other experts, medical experts, and not only medical experts. Actually, they required the expertise of an expert, someone who had a degree in physics and a mathematician. They calculated the amount, the impact with which Jose Juan Barragan hit the ground. Usually, it is estimated that a weight of 35 kilos, that is a little bit more than 70 pounds, can break the vertebral column at the level of the neck. They calculate that the impact with which Jose Juan Barragan hit the ground was of 2 tons. So practically instead of 70 pounds, an enormous amount. So, as I said, usually 90% of people would not have survived. If he had survived, would have remained paralyzed for the rest of his life. This didn't happen. Of course, that is the miracle. The second one, no, sorry, the first one that was not because avoided by John Paul II. That was the miracle that practically produced in 2002 the canonization. So I'm saying there is not only a monumental amount of historical, archaeological, literary evidence, there is also scientific evidence about the science have not been able to not explain how this guy could have survived in a suicidal attempt plunging head down for 33 feet of height and hitting the cement head first. Having said that, Monsignor Schulenberg in 1996, when Kevin said that he was forced to resign, he apparently in an interview with I think with the magazine, he claimed that San Juan Diego was a cult and that there was no historical evidence about. Okay, so now, if I remember correctly, I didn't investigate what was the age of Monsignor Schulenberg, but Kevin said that he was in his 80s, so past his 80s. I want to leave the reservation of doubt that he was not in bad faith, but I would say that maybe at least he could have been senile, so we're not being able to know exactly what he was saying. But in spite of all the evidence, historical, archaeological, and literary, plus the 6 years of documentation about the miracle, the fact he came out with the fact that San Juan Diego was not an historical character and actually he was a myth, well, you know what? Believe me, but I cannot imagine how the church didn't force him to resign. How can God intervene, at least according to Catholic teaching, when there is a miracle? It's not the saint who performs the miracle, it's God who performs the miracle. But the saints intercedes for the miracle. In this case, the mother appealed to Juan Diego that at that point had not even been beatified, but was beatified 3 days later. But Juan Diego, my hijo, San Juan Diego, sorry, Juan Diego, my son. Well, the son survived the attempt of suicide that science has not been able to explain. So at this point, there is not only historical, literary, and archaeological evidence, there is also a scientific evidence that is monumental, which led to the canonization of San Juan Diego. So the fact that Kevin, I'm sorry, but I don't think was too honest in my part, tried to present Monsignor Schulenberg as a poor victim of the church that is a bunch of nasty people that believe in people who never existed. How God could have produced a miracle if had been interceded by someone who never existed? No, just out of curiosity. And anyway, does it make sense?
Yeah, no, thank you for answering that. And by the way, Schulenberg was born in 1916, so he was 80 years old in 1996.
Okay,
There,
well,
but
80 years. Well, there are people that get Alzheimer when they are 40 in their 40s. So,
yeah,
as I said, I don't. My point is that I leave to Schulenberg the reservation of doubt that maybe he would have been a little bit senile, have not his clarity of mind too much. But in case he made the statement in full capacity of mind, at the point it's even worse. So, in spite of all the evidence, the historical, archaeological, and literary, and the miracle had been investigated now for 6 years when he made those statements, well, at that point, really,
gotcha, gotcha.
I
He's just
cannot see how the church could have avoided to force him to resign.
fair enough. All right, cool. So I'm going to let you continue on. And in the future, Massimo, just to help you with the time, if I ask a question that you're going to be answering in future slides, feel free to just let me know. Like, oh, I'll be answering that later on, kind of thing. Is that I don't want to take you
No,
off
no,
track.
well, the point is that I would say that here we have already seen a couple of examples. One, the Nican Mopua that Kevin didn't mention at all. In spite that Nican Mopua is mentioned in the Vatican document that is related to San Juan Diego, and that I saw he showed a couple of documents in that first video. So you don't need to read that. I don't know if he said you don't need to read that because it is mentioned something that maybe is not supporting my theory. Number one, plus, so I provide some kind of literary evidence, and there is not only just this one. There is also the Codex Escalada that Kevin himself said if this Codex Escalada is true, that would defeat my somehow would be a big evidence against my theory. So now we have the Codex Escalada, the Nican Mopua, and other stuff. And now we have also the scientific, and this is monumental. So it's recent. This, Kevin can say, oh, but this was stuff that first literary evidence dates only to 1649. It dated to 4 years, 6 years before Schulenberg, and examined by plenty of not only medical personnel, doctors and scientists, but also by physicists and mathematicians to calculate the impact of the head of Juan José Barragan on the ground. So, you know what? I know that he can still decide that this is not enough, but when, as I said on the occasion of the miracles, Eucharistic miracles, as Saint Thomas de Aquin said, for those who have faith, no proof is necessary. For those who have not it, no proof is sufficient. So I want to see what will be the reaction now of Kevin to this evidence that I'm mentioning now. But I have others, so I have other evidence. So this issue that is quite two very important elements. One, a literary element evidence against Kevin's theories or theory that San Juan Diego is not an historical, okay? And then the scientific evidence that is monstrously, it's enormous. Not just one person, maybe who knows what, the church is very rigorous in carrying out the process of beatification and canonization. They undergo through enormous amount of investigation. Monsignor Chavez, the one that I said he was the postulator for the cause of canonization, I attended, I said that, and the founder of the ISEG, the Instituto Superior de Estudios Guadalupano, in that course that I attended by him, he said at a certain point, he received a letter in which someone claimed that San Juan Diego was a Viking. You can realize that it's kind of far-fetched theory that San Juan Diego was a Viking. Okay, so he wanted to take the letter and throw it into the basket for the trash. Someone, I don't know, his superior, they told, no. You need to reply to him. So all the elements, all the disputes, all the criticism have been analyzed. So it's not that the church is very superficial. Decides the point in how Kevin presented the firing of Monsignor Schulenberg, presenting Monsignor Schulenberg as poor victim. The church had decided to go for the miracle anyway, but he didn't mention at all the situation of Juan José Barragan. So the church didn't decide out of blue sky. The church decided to go for the miracle because there had been a miracle of Juan José Barragan. So it's not poor Monsignor Schulenberg. I would say at least senile Monsignor Schulenberg, if not Monsignor Schulenberg in full awareness of what had happened, and don't tell me that he had not heard anything about the miracle, decided to claim that San Juan Diego was a myth and the whole story of Apparition was a cult. But you know what? I think you need some guts at that point to make that claim that poor Monsignor Schulenberg, the church wanted to do the miracle, the canonization anyway, and this is why they fired him. The situation it's a little bit different, and I'm kind of sorry and I'm kind of disappointed because Kevin is not a stupid person, so definitely for sure. The fact that he picks and chooses what favors his theory and leaves out an amount of other evidence that is monumental, but that is against his theory, As I said, I don't want to use harsh words, but I think he could be better, to say the least.
Gotcha. It's a selection bias. You're saying that.
Exactly. Exactly. So practically, he also tests into compliance. He goes around finding the proofs that support his theory, and then he leaves out the proof that doesn't support his theory, including scientific evidence of enormous proportions.
Gotcha. All right, cool. So yeah, I'm gonna let you continue on with the
Okay.
presentation. Yeah. Sorry about I didn't know. Sorry about that, but it was important to deal with that objection. So thank you for that.
No, you're welcome. So I was saying that I base the history of the apparition on these documents, especially mainly on the Nican Mopua. So having said that, so this is a painting by San Juan Diego by Miguel Cabrera, who was a painter who lived between 1695 and 1768. To say the truth, Cabrera here painted San Juan Diego more as a Spanish nobleman than as actually San Juan Diego was not number one. He was not an Aztec. He belonged to a Chichimeca tribe, so was not from the point of view the ethnicity. He didn't belong to the Aztecs. He belongs to Chichimeca. So it was a different ethnic group. Plus, he was not an important man in his society. He was a commoner. He was not a prince. He didn't belong to nobility. He was not an important figure in his society. So he was going from. He lived at the time in Tulpetlac with his uncle Juan Bernardino. When I say lived with, they had two houses, one next to the other. And on Saturday the 9th, December, on Saturday, December the 9th, 1531, he was going from his house in Tulpetlac to the Franciscan mission in Tlatelolco to receive religious education. Okay, so at a certain point he passed by this hill that was called Tepeyac Hill, that was a rocky hill. Was not the soil was not fertile. The environment was quite acidic. There were not beautiful plants, so he was passing by. And at a certain point, he started hearing songs of birds, very beautiful songs of birds. This is why Miguel Cabrera, sorry, painted these birds here. At which one he started, according to Nican Mopua, he started telling himself, by any chance, am I worthy? Have I deserved what I hear? Perhaps I'm only dreaming it. Perhaps I'm only dozing. Where am I? Where do I find myself? Is it possible that I am in the place our ancient ancestors, our grandparents told us about, in the land of the flowers, in the land of corn, of our flesh, of our sustenance, perhaps in the land of heaven? Here we see already that San Juan Diego mentions, am I in the land of flowers? We see flowers, we see also during the rest of the presentation, flowers played a very important role in the central, in the cultures of the central Mexican peoples as a way of a demonstration of truth. Not only the flowers, but also the song. The song and flower played a very important role. So he started climbing the hill, and sorry, strike that. So let's rewind a few years before. So San Juan, that was what I just mentioned occurred on the Saturday, December 9th, 1531. But San Juan, this is another modern fresco of the baptism of San Juan Diego. So San Juan Diego, in spite of the fact that Kevin thinks it was an historical, a fictional, never existed guy, actually had been born in around 1475 and had been baptized around 1524. His native name was Cuautlatoa, that means talking eagle. In native cultures, both in Mexico, but also among the Native Americans in the United States, the Sioux, for example. We know Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse. They usually often had names that related to animals. So his name was Talking Eagle. And his wife, we don't know what was her native name. We know that the name that she chose was Maria Lucia, and Cuatlatoa, Talking Eagle, chose the name of Juan Diego. Maria Lucia, Maria Lucia died in 1529, so 4 or 5 years after the baptism and 2 years before the apparitions. So having been born in 1474-75, he was about 56 or 57 years of age when at the time of the apparitions. Now back to the apparitions, to December 9, Saturday, December 9, 1531. So he starts after singing the very beautiful song of birds, he hears a voice of a woman that calls him Juan Sin, Juan Diego Sin. As I said, his name was Juan or Juan Diego, but he heard being called Juan Sin or Juan Diego Sin. So that was a Nahuatl affectionate diminutive. As someone whose name is Tom or John, to be called Tom, Tommy or Johnny, or Little Tom or Little John. Does it make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So he started climbing the hill and found himself in front of a beautiful woman that, according to Nican Mopua, was a beautiful woman adorned in clothing that shone like the sun. She stood upon stones that seemed to send forth beams of light like jade, and the rest of the earth seemed to shine with the brilliance of a rainbow, and the foliage had the brightness of turquoise and quetzal feathers. Probably most of, I'm sure you, Dale, and probably all the people who will listen to this presentation know what turquoise is, a semi-precious stone with a very beautiful blue color. But I would say probably most of the people, if not probably 99.9% of the people who listen to the presentation, don't know what the quetzal is. The quetzal is it's a bird. I'll show the picture. But anyway, the Blessed Mary, the beautiful woman asked him, San Diego, where are you going? And Juan Diego said, I'm going to your little house in Mexico, Tlatelolco, to learn the things of God. This was before the Virgin introduced herself. Now, the next slide, I'll show you what the quetzal is. The quetzal is this bird. As you can see, it's a very beautiful bird. The body is usually around no more than a foot long, but it is the tail what, number one, you see the colors of the bird is unbelievable. It's green, blue, the red of the chest, white, and then there is the tail that sometimes is green, sometimes is blue, depending on the incidence of the light. And when he flies, come on, it froze again. Okay, so this is the quetzal when it flies. So the body is no longer than a foot, but the tail can be up to 3 feet of length. And you can say it can either be either blue or green, to the point that the feathers of the tail of the quetzal were used for the headdress of the emperor. Only the emperor could wear the feathers of the quetzal on his head, and this is why the bluish green that is typical of the mantle of the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe was the color that only the emperors could wear. So the Blessed Mother, at this point, once San Juan Diego is in front of her, introduce herself. She says, "I am truly the ever perfect Holy Virgin Mary, who has the honor to be the mother of the one true God for whom we all live, the creator of people, the Lord of all around us, and of what is close to us, the Lord of heaven, the Lord of earth." And now she tells him, and this is why I used a darker blue color to stress the importance. She tells him what she wants. I say, "I want very much that they build my sacred little house here." So she wanted a small chapel to be built in that place where she had appeared, in which I will show him, I will exalt him upon making him manifest. I will give him to all people in all my personal love, him who is my compassionate gaze, him that is my help, him that is my salvation. Of course, you can imagine all the him, which I capitalize. She refers to her son, Jesus Christ. And then she explained what is her role, in what role she appears. She said, "Because truly I'm honored to be your compassionate mother, yours and that of all the people who live together in this land, and also of all the other various lineages of men. Those who love me, those who cry to me, those who seek me, those who trust in me." So as mother, she says, "I'm truly the ever perfect Holy Virgin Mary, who has the honor to be mother of the one true God." So as mother, that's a universal role. She doesn't present herself as only the mother of the Aztecs or the Central, as mother in general. Universal mother. And so as mother, she shows the humanity of her son, since she's also human. Christ is 100%, according to Catholic tradition, teaching. Christ is 100% man, 100% God. So as mother, she stresses the humanity of her son, because he was born of a human mother. But as ever perfect Holy Virgin Mary, you see at the top, "I'm truly the ever perfect Holy Virgin Mary," she identified herself with the Immaculate Conception, the dogma of the Immaculate Conception, which was proclaimed by Pius IX in 1854. And she shows, in this way, she shows the divinity of her son, who, as God, was singularly born of a sinless woman. The Immaculate Conception, I know sometimes some people have a wrong understanding what the Immaculate Conception is. Some people think the Immaculate Conception means that she was 3 times virgin before, during, and after the labor of her son. Which she was, but this is not why she was proclaimed as the Immaculate Conception. The Immaculate Conception meant, when Pius IX in 1854 proclaimed the dogma of Immaculate Conception, it meant when she was born without original sin. So she was totally pure and without sin for the rest of her life. Anyway, she asked this temple in that second part that I showed, bolded in the darker blue. The temple in the native peoples of in Mexico, Central America, was practically the foundation of society. It was not just a religious building where to perform rites, or it was the establishment of a temple was more than a ceremonial religious occasion. And to prove this, I'll show two. This is the Codex Mendoza that was. So you see, at the bottom there are 4 characters that are the two that are bigger and 2 that are smaller. The 2 that are bigger are 2 Aztecs warriors. The 2 that are smaller, of course, were evidently warriors of other ethnicities or other peoples or other tribes that evidently had been defeated and submitted by by the Aztec, then these two guys probably were going to be sacrificed to the gods. But to show how important the temple was in the Aztec society, but in the Aztec, also in the society of the peoples of Central America, you see those two drawings, that one and that one. Uh, you see there are like steps. There is like a pyramid, and at the top there is a roof that is kind of collapsing. So that shows that those two temples had been toppled down, has been set on fire. You see there are those strange, looks like small tongues. Those are the fires. Had been set on fire, and the temple had been toppled. To show that glyph, those two glyphs, that one and that one. So the temple top being toppled down and on fire means that the people of that town, of that group, had been defeated and submitted, and that usually on the right of the two drawings of the temple were the names of the two towns that had been defeated and submitted. This is the same thing. So, oh, sorry. Oops. That is the emperor. And you see, those are all different towns that have been submitted and defeated by the Aztecs. So you see, for every town, there is the temple that is toppled down. You see the roof, you see the flames. That is the base of the temple that usually was a pyramid. And then next to each temple that is topped down, there is the name of the town where the temple was. That meant that town, the people who lived in that town had been defeated and submitted. Okay, so this is a painting of Bishop Juan de Zumárraga. So in 1529, he had burned a lot of codices, native codices of the Aztecs. In the letter of June 12th, 1531, he declared they had ordered 20,000 idols to be destroyed. So if we try to walk a few miles in his moccasins that people say here in the United States, we understand that they perform human sacrifices. The Spaniards could not understand that kind of practice, so they tried to they prohibited the religion, they prohibited the human sacrifices, they tried to destroy the temples and a lot of written documents, a lot of codices. But from another point of view, that somehow can be also understandable, that we have lost a huge amount of information about the Aztec culture and the cultures of the native people of Central Mexico. So San Juan Diego goes to the Zumárraga, explains what had happened, and the Zumárraga, to say the truth, didn't pay too much attention to him on the first visit on Saturday the 9th. And San Juan Diego goes back to his house moves back, leaves Tlatelolco, where there was a house of the residence of the Zumárraga, and on the way to his house in Tupetlac, he passes by the Tepeyac Hill again, and at that point, the Blessed Mother appeared to him a second time. So there were two apparitions on Saturday, one apparition on Sunday, no apparition on Monday, and we should see two apparitions on Tuesday. So now this is the second apparition. The Blessed Mother appears to San Juan Diego on his way back to Petlac, his house, while he was passing by the Tepeyac Hill again. And San Juan Diego asked the Blessed Mother to find someone else for the mission. Somehow, like Moses, he asked God, "Well, can you choose someone else? I don't think I'm the right person for." And actually, the selection of the San Juan Diego by the Blessed Mother reflected the words of the Magnificat that says, "He has cast down the mighty from their thrones and lifted up the lowly." As I said, and at the same time, San Juan Diego revealed to be the perfect messenger who humbly tries to withdraw in order to focus the attention only on the message, not on the messenger. So the Blessed Mother thanked him and said, well, tomorrow, please go to Sumaraga again. Which San Juan Diego very respectfully and humbly does. So this is now this Sunday, December the 10th. This time, the Sumaraga has a different attitude. He see this guy appearing. Sorry, seems that is another apparition. Having gone to him for a second time 2 days in a row with the same message, well, he asked questions at this point. He's asking for many details, but at the end he said, well, you know what, I'm available to believe you, but I need the proof. I cannot believe you at face value. At that point, San Juan Diego leaves and goes back to towards Tupetlac. But unbeknownst to San Juan Diego, without him being aware of it, the Sumaraga sent 2 members of his household to follow him. But evidently, very, very clear, San Juan Diego was much more familiar with the territory. The 2 members of the bishop's household lost track of him. So they went back to the bishop, infuriated, saying that San Juan Diego was a sorcerer and deserved to be punished. But San Juan Diego, as I said, was totally unaware of this being followed, and the true spies had lost him. At that point, the Blessed Mother appeared to him again at the Tepeyac Hill. And at that point, San Juan Diego, kneeling in front of her, tells her how the second meeting had gone, and that the Sumaraga had asked for a sign. So the Blessed Mother thanked San Juan Diego with words of kindness and assured him of the success of his mission, and asked him to return the next day to receive the sign, to return to the next day, passing by the Tepeyac, the Blessed Mother would give him the sign that the bishop was requesting. So we are here. There have been already 3 apparitions, 2 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday. On Sunday morning, Monday the 11th, things took a turn for the worse. As I said, San Juan Diego lived with probably 2 houses, one next to the other, with Juan Bernardino, who was his uncle. Juan Bernardino on Monday morning, or maybe even during Monday night, is extremely false, extremely ill, to the point that San Juan Diego realized that there is a risk that he could end his life that day. So imagine the situation for San Juan Diego was quite difficult. He had already lost his wife in 1929. It's in 1529. Now, the natives would leave often a male elder, especially an uncle, as guardian of or tutor of their children, their wife, and of the house. Plus, being older than Juan Diego, Juan Bernardino in their society occupied the position as a representative of what in Nahuatl was called the Huehuetlatolli, that translated into English was the speech of the elders. So that was their knowledge of their history, their tradition, their custom that was transmitted from generation to generation by oral tradition. So the Huehuetlatolli was more than just a source of advice and education, but was the fabric of their own identity. To the point that the death of Juan Bernardino could have meant for him also partially a loss of identity. At this point, mentioning the Huehuetlatolli, this is another element that, even though it was not recorded in writing, or there is not official written evidence or archaeological evidence or historical evidence, that for sure was an element that was used to transmit the history of the apparitions, besides the literary, archaeological, and historical evidence, and besides and that is why, for example, John Paul II decided in 1990 to skip the need of to avoid the need for a miracle for the beatification. He said there was a tradition. As I said again, in spite of all the literary, historical, archaeological evidence, there was also an immemorial tradition of transmission of the apparition that had been going on for 400 more than 450 years. Correct? So far, so good. So he goes around trying to look for a doctor. It's not clear if he found the doctor, but the doctor was not of help, or he couldn't find the doctor. But anyway, so the Juan Bernardino was able to survive the day of Monday, and so on Tuesday morning, San Juan Diego, very early in the morning, the distance between Tulpetrac, where he lived, and Tlatelolco was 9 miles. So he had to walk 9 miles. He wanted to go to Tlatelolco, to the Franciscan mission, to find a missionary that could come to listen to the last confession of his uncle and to impart the last rites. So to give him to impart the last rites, to listen to his confession and to give the viaticum, that in Latin means the food for the journey, to give the last Eucharist before the person died. So he grasped very early in the morning, he grasped the tilma, wrapped him in the tilma. It was December. This point was December 12th, Tuesday, December 12th. 12 December, like today. So grasp the tilma and goes to get some movement to travel to Tlatelolco. When he reaches the Tepeyac Hill, he realized that he passed by where he had passed in the former on Saturday and Sunday, the Blessed Mother would appear to him. So he tried to take a detour going around the Tepeyac Hill. And to no avail, because even if he went around, he saw the Blessed Mother coming down along the slope of the Tepeyac Hill on the other side. Probably San Quadrio said, "Oh shoot, I have problems now." So the Blessed Mother asked my youngest son, "What is going on? Where are you going? Where are you headed?" So San Juan Diego explained the situation, that his uncle was dying. He was going to the mission, the Franciscan mission Tlatelolco, to try to find a Franciscan missionary to go to bring the last sacraments to the uncle. And they said, but he promised. He said, you see, Juan Diego explained and promised, said, "Let me take care of my uncle today, and then I promise I'll carry out the mission till the end." So the Blessed Mother tells him, "Listen, put into your heart, my youngest son, that what frightened you, what afflicted you is nothing. Do not let it disturb your faith, your heart. Do not fear this sickness or any other sickness, nor any sharp or hurtful thing. Am I not here who have the honor to be your mother?" So she stresses again what she had told him the first apparition saw, that she has come as the mother, but not the universal mother, not just the mother of his mother, the mother of his ethnicity, but the mother of all the people who lived. "Are you not in my shadow and under my protection? Am I not the source of your joy? Are you not in the hollow of my mantle, in the crossing of my arms? Do you need anything more?" And now she tells him a very important thing. "Let nothing else worry you, disturb you. Do not grieve over your uncle's illness, because he will not die of it. For now, you may be certain that he is already healed." So the Blessed Mother practically appears as mother and queen. In the culture of Central Native Mexicans, is an inferior who never called the superior by name. So San Juan Diego and the whole Nican Mopua Nican Mopua, never calls the Blessed Mother by name Mary. The Blessed Mother actually, since the beginning, Juan Diego Sin, calls him immediately by his name. And so actually here he calls also my dear son, my youngest son. So you see here, listen, put into your heart, my youngest son. And so stressing in every way possible her tenderness of the mother. I love to pieces this representation. He said, aren't you under the hollow of my mantle? I already mentioned in on the occasion of my Eucharistic miracle that I've been suffering from severe treatment-resistant depression for 52 years. I've gone through hell on earth, but thank God I've never the idea of it never crossed my mind the idea of committing suicide. Never crossed my mind the idea of using the street drugs. Never crossed my mind the idea of using alcohol. And actually, I realized that I kept praying almost at least for good 30, 40 of those 52 years, and at least 30 of depression. And especially in the moments, the worst moment of my life, of my depression, I often try to imagine the Blessed Mother putting her mantle around me, around my shoulders, my head, protecting me as a maternal mother. My mother was a very difficult mother, was very selfish, very self-centered. So I found help in imagining the protection of a celestial mother. So while the Blessed Mother was appearing to San Juan Diego, totally unbeknownst to San Juan Diego, again, she appeared to Juan Bernardino in Tulpetlac, in the house where San Juan Diego was resting, had remained there being ill. And number one, she healed him immediately. And then she told to him, not to San Juan Diego, how she wanted to be called. She told her name, the Perfect Virgin Saint Mary of Guadalupe. But she didn't tell San Juan Diego. So she was very respectful of the native culture. As Juan Bernardino, since Juan Bernardino was the representative of the Huehuetlatolli, the speech of the elders, she told him how she wanted to be called, not San Juan Diego. Now back to the Tepeyac Hill, where San Juan Diego was totally unaware the Blessed Mother was appearing also to Juan Bernardino at the same time. So the Blessed Mother told him, go up the hill, you will find some flowers. Let's not forget it was December 12th. So in spite of being Mexico, much further south than me in Philadelphia, let alone of you in Toronto, but it was still cold. So you will find some flowers, pick these flowers, put them in Carol, the Tilma, put them and bring them to me. Okay. So San Juan Diego goes to the top of the hill. Actually, there were flowers at the point. I repeat, in an environment that was definitely not favorable to flowers. Number one, it was December, winter. Number two, it was a rocky hill. Number two, the soil was not fertile. The environment was acidic. So all the worst conditions for flowers not to bloom, especially not in December, were there. So San Juan Diego goes up. He had the tilma that they usually he had tied around his neck. So he turns the tilma around to the front and places the flowers into the tilma, as you can see here in this slide. You see and the Blessed Mother and brings them back to. So you see, I place the flowers into the tilma on the front of his chest, and brings the flower to the Blessed Mother. The Blessed Mother rearranges those flowers. You see here, she rearranges the flower. and then tells him, my youngest son, these different kind of flowers are the proof, the sign that you will take to the bishop. You will tell him that from me that in them he is to see my wish, and that therefore he is to carry out my desire, my will. And you who are my messenger, in you I place my absolute trust. So I had mentioned since already in the beginning that in practically here the Virgin Mary takes what is good and true in the native culture and rearranges it. Rearranges the flowers, she rearranges what is good and true in a way that that these elements are brought to the fulfillment of truth in Christ. In the native culture, the flowers and the song. You remember I told that when he passed by Tepeyaquilo, he heard these beautiful songs of birds, and he thought it was the land of the flowers. These were symbols of truth, and the Blessed Virgin Mary's signs of flowers had two purposes. One, to undo the lies of the servants of the bishop, that on Saturday, when after following him, had lost him and said he was a sorcerer, he had to deserve to be punished. But and also as a second aspect, probably the most important, that was a sign to the bishop that it was impossible to explain away as a trick of San Juan Diego. It was a sign of truth and it was a sign of truth for the natives. So when he arrives at the residence of the bishop, the janitor, the couple of people that were there at the entrance, they recognize him as the one who had been lost by his colleagues on Sunday. So they make him wait this time. So now you wait. And so he was there, very, very peacefully remained there, and he was holding the Tilma folded in front of his chest. He was waiting without complaining, without protesting, without them. Was very peaceful, very irenic, as Kevin told about me. That very, very conciliatory, very peaceful. At a certain point, the two people at the entrance started getting curious. What the heck was he holding in the Tilma? And they got closer to him, and the Nican Mopua said that they were getting close. They realized that they were what looked to be flowers. But when they tried to reach them, at that point the flowers disappear, and the flowers appear as being embroidered on the Tilma. So San Juan Diego gets at this point gets a meeting in front of the Sumaraga. And as I have the proof that you asked me. He opens the tilma and lets the flower fall to the ground, as you can see here in the slide. At that point, there was the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe on it, the one that I have behind me. Unfortunately, I cannot show you the whole thing, but so there was the image. The image that I have is a life-size replica, so exactly the same size of the Tilma of San Juan Diego, the one that is the original is in the Basilica in Mexico City. So the Sumara gets on his knees and in tears asks for the forgiveness of the Virgin, and untied the tilma from around the neck of San Juan Diego and took the tilma to his chapel in his residence and asked San Juan Diego to spend the rest of the night there at his house. So practically the impression of the image of the Blessed Mother on the tilma shows and the acceptance of the tilma into the chapel of the bishop are the most important moments of the harmonizing of two cultures, the Spanish culture, the culture of the native Mexicans, and through symbols that convey the same truth. And also the placing her image, imprinting her image on the tilma, the Blessed Virgin Mary gives new dignity to the common person. As I said, he was a commoner. He was not a nobleman. He was not someone with an important role. And especially the Indian, especially the native Mexican have been abused so badly by the Spaniards. So it gives this new dignity to him and to the people like him. Okay, so so then the next day, also this is now Wednesday the 13th. The Sumarraga, accompanied by, not accompanied, actually led by San Juan Diego, goes to see where the Blessed Mother had appeared to him on Tepeyac Hill. So where the chapel had to be built, and so they go there, but followed by a lot of people at that point. But at least the people, the entourage, the people from the household of the Sumarraga. Once they reach Tepeyac Hill, at that point, San Juan Diego leaves the Sumarraga there and keeps going back to his house in Tulpetlac. But still, a lot of people kept following him. So he reaches Tulpetlac, and when he arrives there, he sees Juan Bernardino. It was a reciprocal surprise. Well, not surprise. The Blessed Mother had told San Juan Diego that Juan Bernardino was going to be healed. So he finds Juan Bernardino healed, in good health. So it was not exactly a total surprise, by confirmation that. But Juan Bernardino was surprised to see Juan Diego followed by all these people. So how did that? He's so honored. And the chapel was built in record time, practically in 14 days. The apparition was December 12th. The new chapel was inaugurated on December 26, 1531. And the image was placed inside that small chapel, totally unprotected, neither by a frame, nor by a glass, nor by any kind other, hanging in that chapel for 116 years. After which they put under, but there are three elements that, besides the miracle of Juan Jose Barragan, there are three elements that I consider. I know in the second video that Kevin sent us, a lot of stuff, the image in the eyes, the music, other stuff. I don't buy that. I go by three events plus that I consider kind of miraculous. Number one, the Tilma was kept there for 116 years unprotected. Then was placed under protection. Then later was placed inside other churches. But there was a scientist and doctor. His last name was Bartolacce, Bartolacce, who requested 2 copies made on the Tilma of the same Ayate cactus fiber, and placed them inside the chapel next to the image of the Blessed Mother. Within a few years, the colors had faded, and the fabric started to unravel. So it is. I found almost everywhere that maybe not necessarily. No, Kevin said, "Why the linen, for example, the linen of the shroud is still in existence after 2,000 years." Kevin mentioned some mummies, Egyptian mummies that are. They found textiles in the Egyptian tombs that are in existence after thousands of years. The problem is that the Tilma was kept in the chapel on the Tepeyac Hill, where, as I said, the environment was extremely humid, was extremely acidic, was definitely not favorable to preservation. And the yarns, the fabric of the tilma, the Ayate cactus fiber is very hygroscopic, absorbs a lot of humidity. And humidity is that environment that's the setting in which bacteria prosper or thrive. To the point that, as I said, when Bartolacci had those two copies placed there, within a few days, with a few years, where colors faded, the two copies of Tilma disintegrated, and so on.
Isn't there
So
a dispute about what it's made out of? Like, I think Kevin was mentioning it's like some scientists have said, no, this isn't made of a cactus or something. It's actually hemp, made woven from hemp or something, and that has a longer longevity. What do you make of that
Well,
addition?
I read and I go by in that course led by Monsignor Chavez, the postulator of the cause of canonization, San Juan Diego. He mentioned it is made of Ayate cactus. Considering that he's the leading expert on the team that I know, I go by him. As far as I know, there has not been a specific analysis of, or at least there definitely has not been a carbo 14 test done on the Tilma. But because I think that if as I said, I don't have, in this case, I have not the usual amount of verification that I usually prefer. So I say I go by what Monsignor Chavez say, but I would not bet my head on this. I would not say I have the most absolute certainty that is Ayate cactus. Someone say it's not.
Do,
Okay,
do you mind? Do
go
you
ahead.
mind if I just for the audience sake, just so they hear? So like apparently what so apparently there's one thing talking about it being a cactus fiber from 1921, but then there was a study, more recent study by the University of Dayton, which said it was a two fibers by Professor Chiment did the testing and said that these were woven from hemp. So that's and then there
I'm unaware of this study. I would appreciate if you could send me, if you send me a copy or documentation of these statements. I'll look into it. I accept almost anything, unless you tell me that the shot was made by some plant that Dumbo and his family, flying Dumbo and his family, brought to Mexico. I
right.
mean, as long as there is some kind of reasonable, I'm going to look at it.
Yeah, yeah,
I didn't hear about this study by this doctor from you
yeah.
said
No.
Dayton, Ohio.
University of Dayton, I guess
Okay,
it's
well, anyway, okay.
but just before I finish and let you go back, but there was also a third thing that I'm seeing here from Father Eduardo Chavez. He's
Father Shah is the postulator for the cause of canonization, the one that I mentioned already several times. Yes, it's
okay,
him.
yeah, yeah, and he's saying it's an agave fiber or something.
Yes, the ayate is an agave plant. It's sometimes they call cactus, but it's an agave plant.
Gotcha.
Those plants that grow well in desert areas where there is not regular precipitations. It's an agave cactus, but they call agave cactus, but the ayate is also called an agave plant.
That's good.
Um,
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify for the audience those
but
three.
okay, so Monsignor Chavez is the one that I mentioned earlier on several occasions, that the one who is the founder of the ISEG, the Instituto Superior de Estudios Guadalupano, so the one by whom I go, by I abide. So, but as I said, I'm open to read to look at that study that you mentioned. I'll give a look.
Cool.
Um,
All right, back to you.
okay. Well, at this point, I want to show you a couple of more things, and before the Blessed Mother practically, if you look at the image, she did not appear. The image that she imprinted on the tilma is not the image of a girl from Palestine, how a girl from Palestine of 2,000 years ago. She appeared like a Native American girl, a Native Mexican girl. Actually, this is the slide that I found last night. So I just added this morning. This is a digital recreation of the face of Our Lady of Guadalupe by the anthropologist Miguel Ángel Omaña Rojas, that was made with evidently some kind of I don't know if he with some kind of computer technology, as that she could have what could have been her appearance based on the image of the Blessed Mother. Find a very beautiful image. By the way, one thing that I heard that I think also Kevin mentioned, that some people said that the colors are floating on the surface of the tilma. There is no evidence of it. Actually, if the colors were floating on the surface of the tilma, this is the image from the back of the tilma. So the colors go through the tilma.
And
So
they're not.
Kevin say, well, Sammy could say, oh, well, this is the evidence that it was painted. So this goes through the tilma. Well, the point that there is no evidence of a primer to have been placed on the tilma before the colors were placed on the tilma. And if there were, it had been case had been colors without a primer, the color would have practically by capillarity would have spread all over. So the color would not have been able to be confined to the areas where they are. They would bleed through the whole surface of the tilma. And I don't see sign of this bleeding. I know that Kenny said what did, but had been painted. It was not. I don't know. Definitely, I'm not buying at all the issue that the colors are floating on the surface of the tilma. They are visible also on the other side. So I consider kind of miraculous this fact that the tilma survived. Now in 2021 will be 500 years that it is in existence. I'm sorry that I skipped one. So the tilma was used as besides being used, as you see here on the right side of the slide, as a protection from weather, cold, rain, wind, whatever. It has had also, as in our society, the clothing had also a social status meaning. So you see here on the left-hand side of the slides, the more going from the top down and from the left to the right and from the top down, the more decorated the tilma was, the higher was the status of the person who wore it. Who was wearing it. So you see here, these ones are tilma almost totally undecorated. Then you start seeing a decoration. Then at the bottom, the three at the bottom, the one on the right hand side and in the middle are much more decorated. So the noblemen, the nobility would wear definitely tilma were much more decorated than the one of San Juan Diego, to give you an idea. Same thing with us. If you don't want to spend too much time, want to buy a jacket, you go to Coats or Target. If you want to make a statement, you get a jacket from some very famous fashion designer. I don't know, the ones that I can think of, Versace or Armani, Ferretti, these are all Italian fashion designers. I don't know any famous fashion designer in the United States, but it would be a completely different story than, than someone bought at Coats or Target. And then one more element. Sorry, the tilma was also used for, to tie the knot. Literally to tie the knot. This is from an Aztec wedding, from an Aztec codex. You see, the bridegroom ties the tilma to the tunic of the bride, and that would seal the couple. And finally, not finally, it was also used as San Juan Diego did with flour. It was used as a bag. Here there are some Indians harvesting corn, but they place the stuff in the tilma and carrying it as a bag. Uh, so I already mentioned that Wednesday the 13th, after, so once Juan Diego practically arrived to on the 13th, Wednesday the 13th, back to the house, then at that point, Juan Bernardino explained that he also had seen the Blessed Mother. Juan Diego didn't know that yet. He had remained to the house of the bishop on the 12th, and so he was told only by, and that Juan Bernardino had been healed by the Blessed Mother when she appeared to him and told him how she wanted to be called. So at that point, especially, although the news started spreading immediately, but especially the 14 days after the chapel was in those 14 days, the bishop kept the tilma inside his residence, in the chapel inside his residence. Once the chapel was built in record time, consider it was a very small chapel, probably the size of my living room. I don't know, something would be, I don't know, but it was quite small. It was not a basilica and a huge church. But especially after it was placed there, the news spread like wildfire in a forest on a very windy day. Indian Native Americans started flocking to be baptized, and this is, for example, a painting that shows the baptism of two native Mexicans. Sorry. So at this point, the problem that I mentioned had been I had mentioned that before between the conquest of the Mexican Aztec Empire in 1521, and by the way, you earlier said in 1921. It was not 1921. It was 1521. You're talking about the fiber of which the tilma was made. Between 1521, when the fiddle and the apparitions, there was that huge resistance on the part of the native populations to conversion. After that, people start flocking they arrived by droves asking to be baptized. And to the point that in the years following the apparitions, there are some numbers, but we are talking of millions of native Mexicans who asked to hire from 5 to 9 million native Mexicans asked to be baptized and to be converted. But not only the native Mexicans, the Aztecs and the other ethnicities like the one of San Juan Diego, also the Spaniards, many Spaniards converted after evidently the life of not too much in respect of the gospel, the teaching of the church. There is a story that actually in one day, two missionaries baptized 14,000 natives, so to the point that they had to change their hands now and then. They were so tired that and actually, there were the need for some adjustments to the rite of baptism, between the Catholic Christian rite of baptism. Not only there is the blessing, pouring water on the head of the person to be baptized, but the person needs to be anointed with oil, and there are some other elements that were skipped to accelerate the performance, to use just the water. And the other important thing is that here in Mexico, that whereas in Europe, usually when there were conversions of entire nations, they would start with the king or the queen or the prince or the princess. Here and then the whole population converted. Here was a completely, so it was a process from the top down. Here was a process from the bottom up. it was a commoner who converted, and through the image of the Tilma and the message of the Tilma, it started spreading everywhere, from the bottom up, bottom up. And finally, in 1548, both Juan Diego and Juan de Zumárraga died, kind of having completed their mission. So regarding the huge amount of number, between 5 and 9 million in a period of between 7 and 10 years, in a period where in Europe a lot of Catholics were leaving the Catholic Church because of the Protestant Reformation, here Henry VIII of England. In Mexico, it was the opposite, and a lot of new converts joined the Catholic Church. So there was somehow a compensation. What happened in Europe was then compensated what was happening in Central America, in Central Mexico. Finally, have you an idea, Kevin? So Kevin, sorry, Dale, what this painting represents? I'm sure not, but I'm just trying to animate a little bit.
This kind of battle, but I don't know which one.
Yes, this is a painting of the Battle of Lepanto that took place on October 7th, 1571. At the Battle of Lepanto, a coalition, a Catholic League, sorry, oops, a coalition of a Catholic League of nations, a fleet of a coalition of Catholic League of a fleet of a Catholic League of nations faced a Turkish fleet. The Turkish were trying to get conquer the domination over the whole Mediterranean basin, of the whole Mediterranean Sea. So there was this battle. Pope Pius V called for the whole Catholic world to pray the Rosary in preparation for the battle. And so this is somehow how the two formations of the two fleets. The red was the Catholic fleet, the blue was the Turkish fleet. And you can see here where it was exactly located. It was Lepanto was in the Gulf of Patras. That if you look at here at the right up at the top right drawing is this is the Gulf of Patras, but if you look at the bottom right drawing, it was in Greece, in the northwestern Greece. At a certain point in the battle, when the battle was hanging in the balance, Giovanni Andrea Doria, who was the admiral in charge of the right wing of the battle, didn't maneuver too well. Actually, he opened a gap here between the central formation of the fleet and the formation of which he was in charge. And the Turks tried to take advantage of that not phenomenal way of maneuvering and decide to penetrate into the gap. One thing that I had forgot, I skipped to mention, and I'm mentioning when Juan de Zumárraga died, the bishop in 1548, his successor, Alonso de Montúfar, asked a painter to make a copy of the tilma and sent it as a present to King Philip II of Spain. King Philip II of Spain, in his turn, gave it as a present to Giovanni Andrea Doria, the admiral in charge of the right wing of the Catholic formation, the Catholic fleet. And in a moment when, because of that not phenomenal way of maneuvering, that the situation started to become critical, he had the copy sent by Alonso de Montúfar, the bishop, to Philip II of Spain on his ship, on his flagship. He went in front of the image and on his knee begged for the intercession of Blessed Mother. And the battle was won by the Catholic fleet. And because the battle was won by the Catholic fleet, now I don't want to hear here it was a miraculous victory, but anyway, I think there is enough way for thinking. Because the victory was reported by the Catholic fleet, so Pope Pius V proclaimed the 7th of October to be celebrated as the Feast of Our Lady of the Rosary. By the way, a connection with modern history, I don't think it was a coincidence that the terrorists of Hamas decided to carry out the terrorist attack against Israel on October 7, 2023. So just an analogy with the modern or more contemporaneous history. So by the way, so since the name of the animal was Giovanni Andrea Doria, the image remained within the family for a few years, and then one descendant of the family gave it as a present since the family is from Liguria, which is a region in the northwestern area of Italy, on the coast of northwestern Italy. He gave it as a present to the small town of Santo Stefano di Aveto. So now in Italy, in Santo Stefano of Aveto, there is a church that is called the Sanctuary of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Santo Stefano of Aveto. And there you see above the altar, there is the image of the Blessed Mother. Now back to the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. So I consider quite miraculous the fact that the Tilma is still in existence nowadays, in spite of it being made out of Ayate cactus, until I'm proved wrong, and I shall read that document from that scientist in the University of Dayton. But then for the 160 years was preserved unprotected, no frame, no glass. As I said, in environment inside that chapel was acidic. There were descriptions sometimes where there were floods. The water would flood the floor of the chapel, so it was very humid, acidic, and so on. But then at the end of the 1700s, 1795, at that point had been placed behind in a frame. There was a worker who was cleaning the frame with nitric acid. For those who have not familiarity with chemists, nitric acid is an extremely powerful acid, would put a hole on any fabric, synthetic or natural. As you can see here, the spiral current started in this area. I'll show a better picture on the next slide. So you see here, it started there on the top right-hand side of the Tilma, and it started as a single flow, but then divided in three different flows. Is a larger flow on the left-hand side and two thinner flows on the right-hand side. The flow on the left-hand side not only didn't put a hole, not only, the whole flow, the whole spill, not only didn't put a hole on the Tilma, but actually it ran, you see there, over that area, that area of the halo around the Blessed Mother, and didn't even discolor the halo. If someone want to try to convince me that was a normal accident, or you need to have all the evidence of this world, I will not believe you, not even at gunpoint. The nitric acid can run over a fabric made of whatever. We don't want to use the Ayate cactus, linen, cotton, any natural material, not putting a hole and then running over the colors, not even affecting the colors. So now let's move forward. I want to finish earlier than this, but so the Tilma was initially in that chapel, when then a larger basilica was built. This one But then in the last, I don't know, I think in the 1980s, I don't remember the exact date, the new basilica was, this one is very modern, it's huge, was built. And this is where it is preserved nowadays. It's up on the wall. And even though at the bottom, there is a conveyor belt, so people cannot work there and stop there for half an hour because they need people to move around because the shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe received 20 million visitors per year. It is the largest shrine, the largest pilgrimage site visited in the whole world, with the largest amount of visitors per year. Here also, I don't want to say that is a scientific proof, but the fact is still nowadays, in case San Juan Diego had not been a real person, that 20 million people go every year to visit this image. 20 million dodos every year are fooled by the church, and have been fooled for 4.5 centuries. I don't know, maybe, but I think it's kind of hard to press. Anyway, so it is placed up on the wall. At the bottom of this quite up on the wall. There are at least probably. I've been there in the 1990s. It must be at least 30 feet high on the wall. Now it's surrounded by a frame, and it's protected by is protected by. Come on. Okay, it's protected by a bulletproof glass. I said, why is protected by a bulletproof glass? I'll explain why. In the at the beginning of the 1900s, the communist government of Mexico wanted to do away with the Catholic Church. They want to destroy the Catholic Church, and they decided in order to do that, they want to destroy its main symbol, the Tilma de Guadalupe. So on the 14th of November, 1921, this gentleman, Luciano Carpio, he was a soldier, was told to get into the basilica and to place a bouquet of flowers on the altar above which the Blessed Mother, the Tilma, was preserved. So he entered into the basilica. At that point, when he entered, he had this bouquet of flowers. What people didn't realize that inside the bouquet of flowers there were dynamite sticks. I don't know how many, but there was dynamite. He tried to. There was a high mass at the time when he entered. I think it was 10:30 in the morning. There was a high mass. So it was the mass is before Second Vatican Council. So the high mass was very long, very ceremonial, a lot of incense burning, singing. So he tried to get closer to the main altar, above which there was the Tilma, but the sacristan prevented him from doing it. So he had to wait the end of the mass. At that point, the priest and the sacristan went into the sacristy. And the sacristan didn't stop paying attention to Luciano Carpio, at which point Luciano Carpio was able to approach the Tilma, the altar, the main altar, put the flower, the bouquet of flowers with the bomb inside on the altar, and it was detonated. So this is a picture of that is the altar on which they had placed the bouquet of flowers with the bomb. You see there are items all over. It shatters. Actually, I listened recently to a video by Monsignor Chavez, the postulator for the cause of canonization. He said the sacristan, he heard the explosion. he thought that the dome of the basilica had collapsed. The explosion was so enormous that he went out. There was a huge amount of smoke. Luciano Carpio tried to exit the basilica. Of course, there were police people outside. They caught him. He was arrested. But then a phone call from the government told he don't do anything to him. The public there wanted to lynch him. But to give you an idea of so this is a picture of 14. You see, that was the altar where the bomb was placed. That was the image. It was not under a bulletproof glass as it is nowadays. It was a very normal glass. It was a very normal frame. Neither the frame, nor the glass, nor the tilma were affected by the explosion. So eventually, instead of putting a bomb, it was a firecracker. No, it was not a firecracker. This was a massive bronze crucifix that was on the altar. It was a bronze crucifix outside, but it had a core of iron. The height from base to top was 162 centimeters for those who are Spanish speaking. I use meters and centimeters. In American measurements, it was 5 feet and 5 inches tall, and was 50 centimeters. That means 20 1 foot and I need to 50 centimeters is 25 20 inch 20 inch wide, 20 inch wide, and had a weight of 34 kilos. In pounds, about 75 pounds. So not something you could not bend that easily. So that is a picture of the time. This is how it is preserved nowadays. You see how now they polish it, but to bend something so massive, and this is the next slide. To bend something so massive, you need an enormous impact, the impact of the explosion, but an enormous impact that created such a devastating bend on such a massive structure that didn't impact at all the tilma, the frame, and the glass in front of it. I cannot explain differently than through a miracle. Actually, I would say that, as Monsignor Chavez said, it was as though Christ with his body protected his mother. The crucifix was on the altar, as though Christ with his body on the crucifix protected his mother on the altar behind him. The Blessed Mother has protected Christ when he was in her womb. Now he protected his mother when he was on the altar. At this point, I would say I close here. I wanted to be an hour, 2 hours. I'm actually 2 hours and 30 minutes, but better than 4. So I don't know if you have any questions, and then we'll continue in part 2.
No, not really. I think you were kind of thorough and that sort of thing, and I like that you're qualified in the evidence you take from the tilma. Like you don't go for everything. Like, oh, you see stuff in the eyes. Like that's
No. I know. I see it. I see it with both claws. I see it with the shroud. I see it with the tilma. People wake up one morning, appoint themselves experts on the shroud, expert on the tilma, and say the most absurd things. So I go by hard-nosed science and by hard-nosed evidence. Not just by hard-nosed science. I go also by very solid historical, archaeological, and literary evidence. So this is how I usually, how I will always try to proceed. So as I said, that professor or scientist from the University of Dayton, I never heard of him. I'm willing to read the paper in case you send it to me. I'm open to see what he says.
Okay. There is, oh shoot, okay, it's not working. There's one thing I'm just trying to log in about the historical document from the 1545 to 1548.
Yes.
That hang on, I'm just trying to find. There was something about that I want. I think I should ask you about. All right, hang up. Okay, so is that from the what's called the Codex Escalada?
No. The Codex Escalada was discovered by a Jesuit whose last name was Escalada, but in the 1990s. So Kevin said in his video that if the Codex Escalada is true, is correct, would be definitely something against his theory. But he was pointing out that the time of the appearance of the Codex, oh, sorry, not the appearance, of the discovery of the Codex Escalada was seemed very appropriate. It was discovered just a few years before the canonization of San Juan Diego. So he was kind of insinuating the doubt that somehow that Codex Escalada was almost discovered in order to support the canonization. Does it make sense so far?
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
The point is that the Codex Escalada, as I said, I think was discovered more or less in the same period when, or in the 1990s. I don't remember the exact year. More or less in the same period when Monsignor Schulenberg was forced to resign. And so Kevin was kind of insinuating that, you see, they discovered this codex almost just to support the canonization because they had somehow didn't have other support. As I said, there was the miracle of the survival of Juan José Barragan, which had occurred in 1990. And that is that which led to canonization of San Juan Diego. That was the second miracle, the one that is requested for the canonization, not the discovery of the Codex Escalada. Does it make sense?
Yep, perfect. Thank you so much.
Although the Codex Escalada also doesn't support Kevin's theory, but even I leave open the fact that maybe the Codex Escalada could be not necessarily an authentic document. That would not have changed anything about the canonization of San Juan Diego because of the miracle of Juan José Barragan having survived that brutal fall from the balcony 33 feet above ground, hitting the ground with the head, with an impact of 2 tons, and not having had them reported a fracture of the skull. And after 3 days, waking up at the moment that John Paul II was elevating the host in the mass for the canonization, and not only having survived alive, but not having reported any paralysis, and not having been limited to the rest was in a wheelchair, and so on. So the Codex Escalada, yes, he mentions it. It's definitely not in favor of Kevin. He tried to insinuate that the discovery of the Codex seemed very appropriate, but that in case that were false, or the forgery, would not change anything about the canonization of San Juan Diego. The canonization of San Juan Diego is based on the miracle of Juan José Barragan, which occurred on the 3rd of May and then the following days of 1990.
Awesome. All right, cool. And the date, 1995 for that codex kind of thing.
Okay. So 1995, the codex, Monsignor Schulenberg forced to resign. As I said, I don't know exactly. I would say that probably Monsignor Schulenberg said what he said, maybe because he was senile. So I leave him the possibility, open the window that he was not totally anymore in full possession of his mental capacities. But in case he had said fully aware of what he was saying, at that point it would be even worse. In spite of that miracles, Juan Jose Barragan, he said what he said. Jesus, man, I cannot approve more of the church having fired him. Sorry, or having forced him to resign.
Gotcha. All right, cool. So I guess just to kind of end off, what, because I know this was going to be part one, and then you wanted to do a part two. So do you want to just inform the audience again, just remind them, what did we cover here in part one, and then what are you planning to cover next time in part two?
In part two, I shall focus on the theology and the symbolism of the tilma, all the symbols that are on the tilma, the theology of those symbols, the meaning of those symbols, the message, and I will keep presenting the historical, archaeological, and literary evidence about the historicity of San Juan Diego.
Gotcha. And do you know when you would be wanting to present that? Is that in the new year or?
I would say yes. Let's today is the feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Happy feast of Our Lady, but also for those who are Christian, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. That let's reconvene in the new year. Okay, if you
Sounds
don't
good.
mind.
Awesome. All right, cool. Well, just before we go for the audience, you're not finished with me this week because tomorrow, Massimo, you might be interested to tune in to this once I post it, but I'm continuing on with my Shroud Wars. So I'm bringing on the Shroud skeptic Hugh Ferry, as well as Mark Gluskin,
Okay.
to discuss the Hugh Ferry's image formation mechanism, his and Luigi Garlicelli. So they basically
Forgive me, but it's Garlaschelli. He's Italian, so you pronounce Garlaschelli. I know in the English pronunciation would be Garlaschelli, but Garlaschelli. So CHE in Italian is pronounced Che instead of She as you pronounce it in English. So it's Garlaschelli, not Garlascelli. But no,
fair
not to
enough.
be mean, but because being Italian, when I hear Italian last name distorted because they are pronounced with an English pronunciation instead of Italian pronunciation, I cringe a little bit.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So yeah, the Garla guy, I'll call him that. But
No,
yeah,
Garlaschelli, Luigi Garlaschelli, Luigi Garlaschelli. Yes, yes, yes.
there you go. So yeah, we're going to be evaluating the powder rubbing mechanisms and Hugh Ferry's Quem Queritas hypothesis for explaining those images. And we're going to see, can they explain the images and all their properties, or are they an utter failure? So tune in to tomorrow, and I should have that up for you guys. So yeah, that's it.
One question. So in order to connect, I come to the what do I do?
Oh, to see that show, you just go to my YouTube on Real Seekers because again, I can't live stream, so I'll record it on Zoom around 10 a.m. tomorrow.
Okay, so it's not live. Will be recorded and you will put on live on.
Yeah, thanks.
You will post it later. You will post it later on YouTube. Okay, sounds good. I don't need to be
Yeah, yeah.
watching.
Thanks to Tyler Fowler and his tyranny, I can't do this live streaming anymore, but I will have it up tomorrow for you. So yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds good.
All right, cool. Well, have a great week, everybody, and yeah, I'll see you next time.
Likewise, and again, happy feast of Lady Guadalupe and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.